So, hi everyone, I am Kedasha, and today I'm here to teach you or to tell you how to get the most out of GitHub Copilot. So, GitHub Copilot is an AI pair programmer that helps you to code a lot faster. And it also goes beyond your editor, and I'll be showing you a lot of those features today. So I'm Kedasha. I work at GitHub as a developer advocate. I've been a software developer for about 4 years, and I am Jamaican. So if I bust out in some Jamaican twang because I can't figure out how to debug the code live, forgive me. My Jamaican vernacular will definitely come out, but today is not about me. It is about GitHub Copilot. We're gonna skip over this slide and go straight into it. So just in case you're unfamiliar, GitHub Copilot is an AI pair programmer, and it lives in your editor as an extension in your IDE. It also is in your terminal, it's on github.com, and it's in multiple places on github.com to help you go a bit faster. So you can use it in Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, NeoVim, and JetBrains IDEs. Like PyCharm over there. You can also use it with multiple languages, Ruby, Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, of course. And I've even seen somebody translate code from one language into COBOL or from COBOL into another language, which I thought was pretty slick. I've also seen developers use it with Terraform to do ISE stuff, so there are a lot of use cases with GitHub Copilot. Now, how can you make the most out of this tool? I have 6 tips to share with you today, and then we're gonna jump into a demo where I'll be attempting to build, either successfully or I will fail in front of you, an ML model with GitHub Copilot live. So the first tip I have for you today when using the tool is to make sure that you have your files open. Open files means you'll be able to give the tool context as to what you're building and what you're doing, all right? The second tip is to provide a top-level comment, and a top-level comment means, you know how sometimes when you're trying to talk to your coworker about what you're building, you really can't figure it out? So you give them an overarching view of what you're trying to build so that they understand where you're going. It's the same thing with GitHub Copilot. You want to let it know where you're going, what you're trying to do, because if you don't tell it, it won't know, right? It's not a guessing game with GitHub Copilot. The third tip for you is to set includes and references. And setting includes and references essentially mean tell it what version of a tool you want to use. So let's say you're trying to build a Flask API. Instead of just saying, build a Flask API for me, say, build a Flask API using version X to do XYZ. You know what I mean? Be specific in your request and you will get back better responses. The fourth tip is that meaningful names matter, and this is essentially like having good programming practices and principles within yourself and within your editor is only going to give you better results, essentially meaning garbage in, garbage out. One thing about GitHub Copilot is that it will show you whether or not you're coding properly, and so if you're finding that the tool is giving you code that looks like a little iffy, think about what's currently in your editor, okay? The fifth tip is to provide specific function comments. And so separate from providing that overarching view of what you're trying to do, specific function comments mean like, let's say you're trying to write fetch airports to fetch a list of airports from your database. Instead of just saying fetch and then write your function, say fetch airport data or fetch airports, and this will give GitHub Copilot additional context into what you're building. With LLMs, it's all about context. LLMs or large language models, it's all about context. So the more context you can provide the tool, the better results you will get. The sixth tip for you is to provide sample code. So sometimes it's important to tell GitHub Copilot like what you're looking for if it's not giving you the thing that you want. So like, I know sometimes for me, I ask it to do something and then like it doesn't do the thing and I'm just like, oh my gosh. But as soon as I give it an example of what I'm looking for, it's almost like turning on a button and it's like, oh, this is what you meant, here you go. And I have a much better time using it. One thing about using GitHub Copilot in your editor and beyond is don't get frustrated with the tool. It is an AI, it's not here to replace your job. It's not here to do your work for you. It's here to help you go a bit faster. It's all about being a more productive and efficient developer. Now, I have a demo today for you, And if you go to gh.io/PyCon demo, you will see the repository that we'll be using today. And today I will attempt to build an ML model live with GitHub Copilot. So let's see what we can do. So I have a data set here, and this demo is actually based on a larger workshop that we do with software developers on using the tool. And the first step is to build an AI model. So that's what we'll be doing today. The data set that we have is a list of observations of US domestic flights from 2013, and it has a lot of information. This is the data set flights.csv, and it's just a big blob. So let's go into our notebook to get a bit of a clear understanding of what's going on in the data to do some exploration. So I have some notes right here on my tablet, just so I don't forget anything, because whenever I do live demos, my brain goes to mush and I can't seem to remember a thing. All right, so if I look over here, that's why I'm looking over here. So the first thing I want to do is to say, if I hit Command I or Control I on my keyboard, it will bring up inline Copilot inline chat. And so that's what we'll be using right now. So I'm going to say, I want to load a data set and see the first few lines. All right. Using pandas, that looks good. I'm gonna click accept, and this is not the path because I didn't provide it with the path. So it's at data flights.csv, and there we go. Click run, and that should run for me. And as with any other data set, one of the first things you want to do, okay, let me remove print, and then it should look the way I want it to look. Awesome. And so we have a lot of information here. Now, as with any data set, you want to make sure that you clean the data. So like remove any null values, remove any outliers. So let's do some of that work right now. So if I click a new cell, I can say, and this is going to be like that top level comment for the function, find So I'm just gonna start typing just so it's in a function. I'm gonna hit tab, remove sum because I don't need it to be summed. Then I'm going to say, I'm going to replace these values. All right, there we go. In place equal true. That looks good to me. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to normalize the data to remove outliers. I think it's step delay and arrival delay. Yep. And here you see it's giving me a suggestion, but it's missing arrival delay right here. If I go to the next suggestion, there it is. So I can click accept to get the second one. And if ever I'm working and I don't know what any of the code means, I can highlight it. I can go to Copilot chat and I can say, explain. And it should grab that context, that line that I highlighted because it's highlighted. And there we go. It's telling me exactly what's happening. All right. And that's actually not what I wanted to do. So I'm going to remove this and I'm going to say, find the outliers from, this is why I have notes. Calculate the z-scores is what I wanted to do actually. Which it should be the same. It should be the same code, I think, or similar. Alrighty, there we go. Now I want to find the absolute z-scores. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And then I want to Okay. And now I should have some clean data to work with. Now, if I want to see how many rows and columns, I can ask a question like, how do I see how many rows and columns I have? And it should tell me to use the shape attribute, which I expected. And so I call this a dummy question. And so sometimes when you're working, you don't remember how to do certain things, and so you want to ask that question. But if you don't want Copilot to keep that context within the conversation, you can hit this X button right here in VS Code to remove it. Now let's keep going. Something else you can do right here is you can ask questions about your data. So if I do Q, what does, and there was a strange name up here, this one. So I can say, what does this mean? And it's going to give me an answer right here. So like I can have a conversation right in my editor about the data I have because it has the context of the data in like its memory or whatever we call it. But let's keep going. So let's say I want to create a chart. This is also something I can do using GitHub Copilot. So I can say, I want to calculate the average arrival delay by carrier and sort in ascending order, then create a bar chart. How do I do that? It's going to say to calculate this, here's a step-by-step guide, and then it's going to give me the code to do that work. I can hit this insert a cursor icon here, check the work, and these are all items in my data, so I can run it, and there we go. We have a bar chart of the average arrival delay by carrier. Now, let's commit this work, and then we're gonna go into creating the model. So something else is you can get like commit messages. So if I hit the sparkle button, that's not a README, let's try again. Okay, let's just commit it regular way. So I'm just gonna say updates for now, but make sure your commit messages are has a lot more information. Let's keep going. So if I wanted to create a model, I can ask GitHub Copilot and give it this prompt. It's quite long. So I want to say, create a model to predict the likelihood of a flight being delayed by 15 minutes on a given day of the week and the arrival airport. Use logistic regression, split the data into training and testing data sets, and train the model, and then calculate the accuracy of the model. And then this function should give me an output of the accuracy score. That's what I'm expecting. So let's see what it gives us. And as you see, like I provided so much information right there. Like I told it exactly what I wanted to do. I told it exactly what algorithm to use, and just to give it a guide so I can get the best results. So I'm less frustrated. You know what I mean? Okay. Delayed. So just looking at this, I know that delayed is not a part of my data set. So what I can do is I can actually ask it this, give it this prompt again, and then if I hit hash and I do file, I can attach my CSV file to the conversation. Because if you notice, I don't have my CSV file open, so it's not getting the context of that information from the file. If I enter, I should get a different response. It's giving us a plan, then it's giving us the code. It's loading the data and doing all the pre-processing. Okay. Didn't need that. But let's see what we get. And if we get an error, we'll debug it together. Don't need this, don't need this. Pre-processed, I don't believe I need that. I don't believe I need this. I'm gonna remove these. And I need day of the week, destination airport name. I actually wanna use destination airport ID. Array del 15, yep. Random state 20%. Monzo.fit, Y prediction. All right, do you see any errors? Sometimes, like I said earlier, I can't see. So let's run it and see what we get. And we have an accuracy score. How about that? So in a few minutes, I was able to build a very simple, relatively simple ML model with GitHub Copilot. But like, think about how much faster and how much more efficient and how much easier your workload would be with a tool like this to help you by your side. You know what I mean? If I wanted to know what this accuracy score meant, I can copy it. I can go to my bestie Chatty. That's not the official name, it's GitHub Copilot Chat. And I can say, what does the accuracy score dot mean? And it's a measure of how da-da-da, right? How cool is that? If I don't understand something, I can just say, what does this mean? Please help me. And it gives me something right there. Something else I love to do with GitHub Copilot is I like to write tests with it. So how many of you actually write tests for your code? Right, exactly. It's a problem. So if I go into my server file, so my server is consuming the models, I can ask Copilot to export the models so I can create an API, and it did it earlier, so this is just a faster going through it. So if I click in this app and I hit this sparkle button right here, Copilot pops up, I can do tests, hit the run button, and it's going to give me a file that I can hit the create. It pops it in a new file for me. And then, of course, I don't think this is gonna run on the first try. I wouldn't expect it to run on the first try, but this is a great start for you to go in, do some debugging, and have some tests for your code. It's very important to test your code. If you're not gonna do TDD, it's okay, but at least write some tests to make sure that your code is working the way you expect it to be working. And GitHub Copilot can help you with that. So we just did a bunch of stuff. So let me go ahead and do a commit. Let me stage. Let's try the sparkle button again to see if it gives us a better commit message. Add unit test for server endpoints, and created the model, we'll say. So let's do a commit. Let's publish the branch. We can create pull requests in our editor, but I don't want to do that today. So let's go on github.com. Let's hit this button and let's open up a pull request. Now, how many times have you opened up a PR that looks exactly like this? No information, no context, no nothing. You just send it to your coworker with vibes and say, please review. And they don't even know what you're talking about. With GitHub Copilot on github.com, you can use this PR summary button. It's my absolute favorite button because now I don't have to try to remember everything that I just did. Once I hit that button, it is going to generate a summary for me. And depending on how much work you did, it's going to give you like links to the exact files, the diffs and such that you can use. So like right here, right, it gave me links to like the airport, test airports, the test predict, the test home, so like different test files. It didn't link to the notebook, which I find very interesting. So I'll bring that back to the team. But if I go to files change, I can also chat about the code that I'm reviewing. So let's say your coworker sent you this code to review, you're reviewing it. You can ask Copilot about the code, so I can like select a portion of the code. This is a test file, but just for, example's sake, and I can say like, what is this code doing? Or I can ask it more intelligent questions, of course, about the code that I'm reviewing. But I think this is such a great tool to get up to speed a lot faster with the work my coworkers are doing because I'm doing my own work. I really don't have time to review the code. And so this is going to give me a much faster outlook on what's happening in the repository or in the PR. Something else I like to do is, let's say you were assigned a brand new repository. So this is an API, it's a fragrance recommendation system, and essentially if you put in fragrances that you like, It's going to give you suggestions on fragrances that you may like based on the notes of the perfume. It's something I'm working on. It's a demo. And so let's say you were given this file and you were told, build the front end for this app. And you're just like, what? What is this API? How do you use it? The documentation is lacking. It doesn't tell me how to get started with it. There's nothing. There are a lot of repos out there like this that we're given, right? I can click on my Copilot friend and I can say, let's say I want to know like where the canon algorithm is used because that's going to be the main driver of this API. So I can say, where is the and what I'm expecting is like links to like specific files that I can then click and look into, and then I can then ask it further questions about what's happening in the code. Yep, so if I click here, there's a notebook, there's the README, there's this fragrance recommend.file, py file, and I can go in here and I can view, and then I can go ahead and ask additional questions about what's happening in the code. I think that's pretty cool. We also have something called knowledge bases. Knowledge bases is essentially like you can talk to your private repositories on GitHub. So Primer is our open source design systems. So let's say I wanted to build the front end UI to accept responses or like data from the user, like accept their current fragrances that they like. So I can say something like, I want to get a user's favorite fragrance. And I'm trying to decide, should I use the text input or the text box component? I'm trying to decide which component to use based on our internal design system. What it's doing here, it's going in, it's looking at Primer, and it's telling me, okay, I can use text input component, but it's designed to accept a single line of text, which makes it suitable for short, free-form input like a fragrance name. Now, I can go in and say, what if I want to get like 5? Okay, it gave me a different component that I wasn't even thinking about with an example of how to implement that. I think that's pretty cool. There are a lot of cool things I think about GitHub Copilot. Something else I love is that we can do what we call general purpose chats. So if I go out, great. So I can hit general purpose chat. And actually this morning, a professor came up to me at the booth and he says, hey, I teach Python and I teach C#. I am looking for information on teaching my students how to use AI with C#. I don't know anything about C#. And so I went to GitHub Copilot and I said, as a general chat, are there any resources, if I can type, or repos on AI with C#, learning resources for students? Pretty general question. And I was hoping to get a list of repositories that I could share with the professor. And that's exactly what I got. And I was so impressed. I was like, wow, here you go, sir. Here's what I found for you in like a couple seconds, thanks to GitHub Copilot. And if you see this Bing sign, GitHub Copilot actually did a web search using Bing to find these resources and then link them directly to me, which I think is what? Pretty cool. And look at that. I was able to share this repo, and it's an awesome repo with a lot of resources on how to use AI with C# and .NET. We also indexed, I believe, over 100,000 of the most popular open source, I keep hitting the mic, sorry, of the most popular open source repositories. And so I can go to a repository like matplotlib, and I can say something like, how do I create a subplot with matplotlib? Hey! And it will give me an example. So I know a lot of times I was so scared of getting started in the open source community and like contributing to open source. And I think this feature is amazing because somebody can go on an open source project that they want to contribute to. They can ask questions about the project. They can get started with the project. They can go to an issue and ask GitHub Copilot to summarize the issue, and it will summarize the issue for you and help you along the way. I think that's pretty cool. The coolest thing I think that we just launched with GitHub Copilot is called Copilot Workspaces, and it's essentially what we think is going to be like the future of software development. We'll see where this leads, but I have a demo video here to show you, if you please, and the sound won't work, so I'll probably just like talk over the video. So here he has an issue that he's been assigned, and he's going to hit the Open in Workspace button. What Copilot Workspace is going to do is it's going to go through your code base and it's going to say, okay, here's the current implementation. That's a bit blurry, isn't it? Here's the current implementation of what's in your code. It's not there. Here's the proposed solution of how we can implement this in your code base. Then the developer is going in and he's going to add some like additional specifications that he wants. Then he's going to hit this Generate Plan button, and the Copilot Workspace is going to give him a whole plan of how we can do this. He's going to add more files. Once he's finished with adding his additional specification, he's going to hit Implement Plan, and GitHub Copilot Workspace is actually going in and it's implementing the code. Like it's actually implementing the plan that it just suggested, and I think that's amazing. But as you see, the developer is still in charge of reviewing the code, making sure it's accurate, making sure that it works to what we're looking for. And he opened it up in a code space because Copilot Workspace provided him with a link that he can open up in a code space to make adjustments. He's doing some debugging on the tests. Now he's going to create a pull request. He's going to get a description that was generated by GitHub Copilot and all the work that it did. He's going to hit that Create Pull Request button, and workflow complete. He just did that issue so quickly with the assistance of AI. Now, if you want to learn more on how you can maximize your usage of GitHub Copilot, there are 2 blog posts that I would recommend that you read on the blog.github.com. It's using GitHub Copilot in your IDE, tips, tricks, and best practices, and then 10 unexpected ways to use GitHub Copilot. I wrote them, but they're pretty great. I promise they have a lot of great tips. I would love for you to share these tips on social media. Just let me know. You can find me online at itsthatlady.dev, itsthatladydev. Love for you to tag me and let me know what you think about this session. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.